Welcome to The Homeless Conservative. My name is Blake Fisher. This is my show where I have conversations about conservatism with other curious and politically exhausted citizens, much like myself. Today I'm talking to my friend Kelley. We're talking about Trump indictments, big scary indictments, and specifically just kind of about the history of Trump's investigations and how a lot of them didn't pan out to be anything. And so I think people aren't really paying attention to this one because all that came before it. So we talk about some of the details, what are the differences between his indictment and, say, how Hillary Clinton handled her emails and classified documents, or Joe Biden's garage full of classified documents. These are all, I think, solid questions worth talking about. And we talk about those. We talk about the Republican primary field, how it's shaping up, what would happen if the election was tomorrow between Trump and Biden, and, several other things like that. So we get into that. So yeah, here's my conversation with Kelley. Hi, Kelley.
Hi, Blake. Thanks for having me.
I know this is technically your second appearance, but your first one was before I decided to do video. So we're going to have that conversation again sometime about immigration on video. Or maybe I'll just release it as audio, but because that's kind of evergreen. They haven't fixed immigration since we talked about that. Believe it or not, it's not been fixed since a couple months ago when we had that conversation.
I was really thinking that podcast was going to do the trick.
We can dream. But no, so we haven't. So we decided to do another one. You've got questions, maybe.
Yeah, do you have answers?
I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. I feel like Trump has been getting indicted for like 10 years, and he's only was the president like not even 10 years ago. So what is happening now? Okay. And this is coming from someone who usually pays a lot of attention to the news, but hasn't in the past a little bit.
So here's my guess.
Nothing.
Here's my guess. I intro this podcast by saying it's for people who are politically exhausted. And I'm going to guess you might fit a little bit into that category.
I'm politically exhausted. I am intrigued by politics. I think knowing what's going on in your nation and in your country and your government is really important. Yeah. This has not been my season.
That's okay.
Of political flourishing.
There's not... I sent you a GIF earlier of a good representation of it.
It was a dumpster fire. It was a fire... No, it was a dumpster on fire floating down a river.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and you said this is what's happening in the country.
This is basically it.
But I kind of feel like that dumpster on fire has been floating down that river for a really long period of time. It has been. And
to be fair, I did that. The fire was fake on that meme. I was really sad about it. The dumpster floating was real, but someone put in the fire. But still.
You didn't have to tell me that.
I know. I just like to make sure that everyone knows.
This is a correct,
we like to
truth-telling,
fix our mistakes
podcast
when we make them. You're right, though. I mean, Trump has been
what's he in trouble for now?
So the short version of the history of the timeline so far has been
start going back from just like presidency stuff.
Okay, you want to go all the way back?
Well, just like give me like a little rundown.
Okay,
a catalog of events, if you will.
Okay,
about his previous indictments.
Okay, so most of them have not turned into indictments, but we've been throwing that word around. We being mostly the media, and when I say the media, I mean the major,
Yeah, it's like Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Kind of, yes.
Because they're like, Trump's being indicted. And I think that's another one of the reasons that I've been politically exhausted, because I see those like terms
since 2015
in the news. And I'm like, well, this isn't anything new. Right. And then I just keep going.
Yeah. So, okay, here's the basic timeline. Trump runs for president in 2016 and wins. And basically, even before that happens, while he's running... We now know this. We didn't know this at the time, but the shortest version, because we could really talk for hours about this one thing, but the shortest version of the long story is now we know that Hillary Clinton paid some political consultants to basically get opposition research on Donald Trump.
Yes, which is probably not too abnormal.
No, always. Everyone does that.
It.
Everyone does this, okay? But... she enlisted like a foreign national to do it, who was like a former government agent.
Russia? Question mark?
No, in the UK specifically.
Okay.
And he wrote up this thing that has since been known as the Steele dossier. And
yes.
You've probably heard of this, okay,
yes.
Right? And it alleged all sorts of things. It alleged that Russia and the Trump campaign were colluding with each other.
Made it up.
Yeah, essentially, yes. Essentially, it was all hearsay and fabrication, and none of it was really based in any kind of fact. Now, there are some facts that were true. The Russians were trying to meddle in the 2016 election, and they did. I mean, they were trying to get into voting databases. They were attempting to meet with Trump campaign staff. And to be fair, the Trump campaign was willing to meet with Russian foreign agents to get dirt on Hillary Clinton.
Not a good look.
That's not a good look. Okay. That's like, that would be if they were willing to take the meeting. And they tried to claim it was about adoption later and stuff, but there was this meeting at Trump Tower that I think it was Don Jr. that originally took. It wasn't actually Trump himself, but either way, close enough. His son.
Donald Trump,
right? Yeah,
had a meeting.
A Donald Trump, and so there was definitely there were threads to pull on for sure. And I'm not saying that the FBI or DOJ, Department of Justice, did wrong by pursuing those leads, but basically it turns out that they used this Steele dossier, which Hillary Clinton basically, this is sort of unprovable, except that basically everyone says it happened, is that her lawyers, who were being paid by her campaign, are the ones that took that Steele dossier to the FBI and said, hey, here's some things we found. I'm not doing this on behalf of anyone, but no one really believes that was what was going on.
Collusion with Russia.
Yeah.
But then didn't it end up being like she had something more to do with Russia?
Well, no. I mean, here's what really happened. Russia did try to interfere in the election. They tried to do it in ways that, in all the investigation since, they did not change any votes.
I know, but were they trying to sway the opinion for Hillary or against Hillary?
Against Hillary, for sure. They were trying to sway it against Hillary. Probably hedging on a bet that they thought Trump would be more friendly, to the Russian government than Hillary. And, really what's funny about that is that as much as Trump liked to talk nice about Vladimir Putin, his administration was tougher on Russia than Obama's was.
Yeah.
Like by the letter of the law and tariffs and all sorts of things like that. Not just not tariffs, but more so like, freezing people's accounts and things like that and pressing charges.
Even more so maybe than hers would have been.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know, obviously. It's all, but I mean, it was definitely, as far as, it's not like a Republican Democrat thing, because there's some weird things that have gotten turned on their head since then. The Republicans used to be the generally more anti-communist, and, not that Russia claims to be communist, but they're a dictatorship, essentially. And traditionally, Republicans are the party of Reagan, who, ended the Cold War and stuff. And so you would think, but because Donald Trump said, I like Putin, all of a sudden there's all these people that think that he's, they now are pro-Russia because Trump was. It's kind of silly, but either way, the point is, Russia did absolutely try to meddle and stuff, but we've learned more and more since there was this Durham report that came out. Basically, it took years, 3 years or something like that, but kind of investigating the investigation of all of that, and they basically found out that look, the FBI did not do their job the way they're supposed to. A lot of this really boils down to that the FBI has taken on more of a role of. The FBI really has kind of two main parts. There's the enforcing of federal laws in the United States.
Right.
And then there's this sort of foreign intelligence part of it that it does for anti-terrorism stuff. And the problem is... Wouldn't
that fall more under CIA?
No, CIA is more about spying in other countries, but post 9/11, not really even just post 9/11, it was happening in the 90s. It really ramped up in the 90s a lot because of terrorist activities, like the first bombing of the World Trade Center and a lot of these other things. The FBI became kind of there's counterterrorism units inside of the FBI and they have things called FISA warrants, which are ways that they can get basically kind of wiretaps on foreign nationals, but not on United States citizens.
Okay.
Because, you have to have a warrant. If the FBI wants to tap your phone, they've got to get a warrant from a judge that says, and all of that, the thing on the criminal investigation side of the FBI, they can't hide that stuff. But, because they're going to have to present that in court and say, here's how we got it. And a defense lawyer is going to be like, you didn't do that legally. You can't admit that. That's not inadmissible in court and stuff.
Yeah.
But with foreign terrorism, those rules don't exist really, because you're dealing with foreign nationals. They're not United States citizens. They don't have the same rights that United States citizens do. So there's this FISA court that's basically completely secretive. Okay, this is a post 9/11 thing.
Who runs the FISA court?
Well, that's a great question that I'm not a lawyer that knows enough, but I do know that it's a small panel of judges, and basically it's
U.S. judges.
Yeah, so it's totally. The bar to get a FISA warrant is much lower than it would be for a United States citizen, for obvious reasons. I'm fine with that and all, except that it's come out that they've abused it hundreds of thousands of times.
Right.
They did it during the Black Lives Matter protest, during the January 6th stuff. They've done it over and over again, getting monitoring people's cell phone usage and stuff like that.
Yahtzee.
Yeah, because, and so the FBI has definitely abused the power that they've been given by like the Patriot Act. And so in my opinion, it needs to get reined back. But really this turns into a problem that the FBI was, there's a lot of different theories about it. I think that it's a combination of some people thought Hillary was going to win and she's going to be your boss next. So you're not going to go after her if you think she's going to be your next boss.
Yeah.
And, then there's probably some people that didn't want Trump to win. There are definitely people that had to leave the FBI, that basically got fired because they were, during this investigation, text messages and things like that are like, we will stop him and stuff. Well, if you're like high up in the FBI, that's not a good look to be saying like, we're going to stop this guy from becoming president.
Right.
And so those people are no longer at the FBI. And that's the FBI would say, oh, look, we took care of the problem. Except no, these people are like contributors on MSNBC and stuff. It's not like they're probably getting paid more now than they did.
Everyone's now a contributor.
Right. Everyone. Right. And so they've not fallen from grace. No one's going, you guys are like, you did a bad job and shouldn't. Anyway, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff that went on. There was a lot of really bad. The Durham report basically comes out and says that the FBI did not do their due diligence to actually investigate if these claims were true or not. There were similar claims against Hillary Clinton's campaign that they did not pursue.
Right.
And almost the exact same thing. Like, okay, foreign national government, they just didn't pursue it at all. And most people think that's, there is a motivation for if she's going to be the boss next, even if you don't like her, you might not try to make an enemy with her. Because no one thought Trump was going to win in 2016. You got to remember, no one thought that was going to happen. Do you think he thought he was
going to win?
No, I think he was surprised. I don't think anyone thought until maybe that night people started going like, wait a minute, or that week. I've read some stuff where there were some people saying like, because really the polls got a lot of crap in 2016, and a lot of them were really bad. But if you looked at just like the margin for error on most of it, if you just looked at national polling, which is not a good way to look at who's going to win a presidential race. It's not how we count it, but it was sort of within the margin of error, basically. And, Trump basically gets the right amount of votes in the right counties to win.
It is so like a 9/11 or an Oklahoma City bombing moment for me. Like, I remember where I was during the Oklahoma City bombing. I remember where I was during 9/11.
Both of those, lots of people died. But I mean, Trump.
Okay. That's not what I mean.
I know.
Just like pivotal moments in the country that I have been alive for.
Yeah.
Like, I remember sitting in my apartment in Brooklyn and being like, oh
yeah, because you're in New York at the time,
holy smokes.
Probably was a day of mourning.
He is about to win this thing.
Yeah.
And just being like, what is going on?
Yeah, I remember texting with a friend who's also kind of a political junkie like me, and it was like 2 a.m. because it was, it kind of got
I stayed up and watched it.
I stayed up too, and we were like, this is bananas.
Yeah.
Like
I did not mean to compare that to a day of mourning.
No, but I get what you mean. It's a flashbulb moment.
Yes,
memory
one of those like, oh, I remember where I was. Like sitting on my brown couch in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, being like, he is going to win this thing.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, I don't think anyone really thought. I mean, there's a few people that called it, but
Yeah. We've gone so far off track from indictments.
Either way,
which is what Blake and I do.
We do this, politics. And it's fine. Okay, so that basically is the first investigation that kind of tarnishes Trump's reputation for 2 years, because the media, instead of being like, oh my gosh, first of all, I mean, the FBI did such a bad job on all this stuff, but the media just ran with everything. I mean, everything was. If you watched MSNBC, it was Rachel Maddow every night telling you that, like, it's any day now. They're going to take him out in handcuffs. And, like, it was just nonsense. There was no...
And then the report ended up proving, in fact, that was not true.
Well, the Mueller... So, the Mueller investigation was the first one that came. And basically, some people got arrested, but it was normally for things like obstruction of justice. And look, the Trump campaign was doing shady stuff for sure, as do probably most campaigns. I mean, what Hillary did to start this whole thing was pretty shady, And some of that's just politics.
Like rules for thee, but not for me.
Kind of, yeah. And so the problem is, for 2 years, we got told over and over again that it was just a matter of time, that there were ridiculous allegations, that there were that Putin had a tape of prostitutes peeing on him in a hotel. I mean, this is real stuff. You're laughing.
I remember that.
But this is real accusations, okay? This is like, it's just bogus, right?
Oh
okay?
my gosh.
And what bothers me is that, like, I don't like Trump. I don't think he has a moral ounce. I don't think he has an ounce of morality in him. I don't think he has any principles at all, other than if it's good for him, he's for it.
Right.
I don't think he cares about anyone other than himself. I generally don't like him. But the accusations were so wild that, like,
I totally forgot about that.
It made everything that Trump really did seem like nothing, because if since 2015 all you're hearing is about all this stuff that ends up not being true, it becomes, like you said, the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that's the first kind of stuff. Nothing happened because of any of that.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah.
Are there still people out there who think that he did, like, collude with Russia? Or can, like, anybody...
Oh, absolutely.
Can anyone stand on that anymore?
They can't stand on it, but they're like, look, this is what also bothers me about...
Like, are you going to get people in your podcast comments that are like...
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he's did it.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think there are crazy people on both sides that think that he's still a Russian asset or whatever, and then there's people on the other side that think he's never done anything. It's all just all the different things. It's all but I think there's those crazy people. And to be fair, I mean, Hillary Clinton claimed that the election was stolen from her in 2016. It was not. I mean, there's still lots of prominent Democrats that said in 2016 the election was stolen, which is why I think it's awfully hypocritical to say Trump's some sort of, like, outlier when he said the election was stolen in 2020 and lied about it.
Right.
And it's like, well, you guys did the same thing in 2016.
They all do the same freaking thing.
You did the same thing in 2004. You did the same thing in 2000. You always call everyone racist that's a Republican. You always say they steal elections. Well, then when someone actually tries to do it, it makes it, it's like, yeah, you say this every time.
Yeah.
So why should I listen to you? So, okay, that's 2016. 2018, he gets impeached twice, which is not a legal thing. I think a lot of people do confuse it with, like, but that's not what impeachment is. Impeachment is Congress saying we are going to try you and remove you from office. That's their power to do to the Supreme Court. Well, not just the Supreme Court. But if he was
impeached twice, but he
was never convicted. Yeah, mostly because the House was controlled by Democrats and the Senate was controlled by Republicans. And so it just wasn't going to happen. Although the first one was... I'm kind of mind that I wish Congress would impeach people more. I feel like when people do unconstitutional things, Congress should, like, impeach them. That's their job. They are the accountability, and they're supposed to be the stronger branch of government or the more powerful branch of government.
I remember vividly
like
going to school in elementary school one day, and there was a giant. It was during all the Clinton fiasco.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad was driving me to school. Clear memory of this. And there was a giant, like, blow up Bill Clinton, and people were throwing peaches at it.
Why peaches?
Impeachment.
Oh, got it. But peaches are delicious. Don't waste them throwing them at a blow up Bill Clinton. Where was this?
I swear on my life, La Fortune Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
And they had a blow up Bill Clinton. Like, someone had that.
It was like in the
storage.
parking lot. I am not joking.
I believe you.
And being like, what is going on, Dad?
Yeah, so we've done it a couple times in our lifetime.
Yep.
But Bill Clinton also did not get convicted. Same situation. And, you know, what Trump did, some people say was okay. The first one was about a call to Ukraine that was basically trying to get dirt on Biden because he knew Biden was going to be his opponent in the next election and stuff. We could talk about that. I think it was worth impeaching, but I don't know that it was worth the precedent of, like, okay, well, then the second impeachment, which I think was way more serious, didn't get taken as seriously because of the previous one that was less serious. I don't think it was, like, frivolous, but it was a little bit like, I think Democrats really did kind of screw up the impeachment process. If they really wanted to get rid of him, I think they could have. But
For what?
Definitely the January 6th stuff. I think they could have gotten rid of him, but they decided to impeach him. So, okay, so that's like 2018, 2019, 2020, or technically 2021, he gets impeached for the January 6th stuff, which they wrote up as incitement or something, like, which I think was too hard. Keep in mind, this is not a, like, innocent until proven guilty, beyond a shadow of doubt kind of thing that you do with like normal trial law for criminal stuff. This is just like enough people in the Senate have to go like, yeah, I think that's worth getting rid of him. There's not like an evidentiary kind of, they
committee.
It's not, there's not, this isn't inadmissible. That's not how it works. So I think if they would have said dereliction of duty just for the fact that like he didn't call the National Guard, he wasn't trying to stop what was going on at the Capitol at all. Like he was just watching it on TV and enjoying it.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a high enough, I think that would have been a bar that enough Republicans would have gotten on board and been like, yeah, we're done with him.
But he got off on that one too.
Because I think that I really do blame the Democrats for just trying to be political about it and trying to go all in on these things that were kind of like, okay, well, that's too far. I'm not going to vote for that.
Okay, so now we're on 2 indictments.
So that's 2 impeachments. Not indictments, just impeachments. But all the while, always a buzz about criminal stuff. They've always been talking about criminal stuff. So then, fast forward to post his presidency and obviously all the stolen election stuff. There's been a lot of investigations because there's investigations into January 6th and his behavior there. There's investigations in Georgia about him trying to potentially threaten people to get him votes to win in that state and not certify Joe Biden winning and to certify him as the winner instead. That investigation is still, they think charges will come for that sometime this summer too. But the first indictment that really, the first time he's actually indicted is by the New York District Attorney.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Indictment.
Yeah.
Give me an actual definition.
Okay, so a grand jury is going to convene, and a grand jury does not have to say guilty or innocent. All they have to do, the prosecution or the state is going to come to them and say, here's the evidence we have. There's no defense or anything like that. They just go here's the evidence. And do you think it's enough to take this to trial?
Okay.
That's what a grand jury does, is they say yes or no kind of thing.
So it's not like an innocent or guilty thing.
Not innocent or guilty.
We have enough there to get us...
it's preponderance of evidence, I think is the...
That's a fun phrase.
Yeah, that's the only time I ever use that word, I think that's what it is. And so... yeah, that's all a grand jury does is says, okay, and it's bigger than 12. I think it's like 25 people or something. I can't remember. I should know these things, but I'm not a lawyer. But anyway, they just say, yes, we think there's enough evidence to take this to trial or to press charges in this kind of situation. And so, this is a district attorney that ran on saying he was going to prosecute Trump, in campaigning. It's pretty hard to not look at that and go, well, that's political. Yeah. During your political campaign, you promised you were going to do that. And this seems like, and it was a real stretch because it was the basic breakdown of it is this is in dealing with his payment to porn star Stormy Daniels. Which is and it was 34 counts, but they counted the signing of the check as a count and the mailing of a check as another count. And because they split it into different payments, it was there's one thing they're charging with, and they're trying to say it's a felony. This is a misdemeanor crime. They said it was falsifying business records is what they went, which I would argue they've not done to anyone ever, probably, is this falsification of business records. It's a misdemeanor, but they say it can be a felony if you can prove they did it in sort of in tandem with a felony crime. So they're trying to say the felony crime was a federal crime, which is not the district attorney in New York's job. He cannot charge someone with a federal crime. And the federal government had declined to do so for this same thing because he was trying to say it was a campaign finance law that he broke. But the campaign finance...
because he used campaign money.
But the FEC had said, no, we're not charging this. This is not... it was too... And this is another thing. It's Trump signed the checks, personally, but because the Trump organization, his secretary, someone did it. They're saying it was the Trump organization. That's why it's business. It's so sketchy.
He did pay her off.
Well, of course he did. No one's defending that. That's what's hilarious in all this. People are like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but he did pay off a porn star. This used to be a thing we'd care about. If someone
well, the moral things have just gone through the roof.
He had a 1-year-old son at home too. This is...
and the hottest wife.
He is terrible. He's a terrible person. I don't care if you like him and want to vote for him. He's a terrible human being. Anyone that cheats on their wife with a young baby at home with a porn star and then pays them off to keep quiet, not a good person. Okay?
Yep.
That's just it. It's fine. If you want to vote for him, fine.
Yeah. But know what?
Don't tell me that you're morally...
yeah, that he's the second coming of Jesus.
And don't ever then go back to Bill Clinton and be like, well, that was different. I think they're both gross. One's diddling an intern that's 20 years old. Mm-hmm. That's gross. He's the most powerful man in the world. And the Democrats just wrote that off as shouldn't be anyone's business what someone does in their private life. And I'm like, No, it's pretty gross, especially now post Me Too and stuff. I think it's pretty obvious that like that's reprehensible behavior for someone to do at that level of power with someone that's like 22 years old. That's really, really, really gross. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, got a bunch of gross people on both sides of the aisle. But anyway, that's the charges. Everyone, I've not read one article by anyone serious that thinks that the charges are legitimate. Like, even liberal lawyers and stuff are like, this is a stretch. They're trying to do something no one's ever done by like pairing it with this federal charge that the federal government declined to bring charges on. But that's like the headline is like Trump indicted, you know? And so, but everyone kind of agrees it's like probably a farce. It's a political thing. And I think my theory all along was like, that's really stupid because now you're going to be like the boy who cried wolf when a real one comes down the line. And my thought of the real one was probably going to be... That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The Georgia stuff...
What do we actually believe?
Right. And the Georgia stuff seems the most, like just based on what very little we know, seems the most likely of having like real bad charges because it's like...
And that has not yet happened.
Hasn't happened yet, but I mean, it'll probably happen in the next few weeks. But this new one that comes, which is the first federal indictment, so the New York one was just a state thing. But the ones that just came out now are due to his, which happened last summer, the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Raid is what everyone calls it. It wasn't really a raid. I mean, they didn't go down there with SWAT. But basically he took bunches of documents from the Oval Office after he left, and that's not how that's supposed to work. Okay. So
do we know what kind of documents?
Yes, lots of different kinds of documents. So I've got notes because I want to be specific and not be wrong about this. Okay. He took at least 337 classified documents from the White House. Now, here's a caveat to that I think is worth knowing. Most people agree that have ever worked in government, and a lot of people have been talking about this for a long time, that there's an over-classification problem.
Okay, yeah. Classified meaning no one else is allowed to see this.
Well, there's different levels of classification of documents. So there's like secret, top secret, there's all these different levels. Even at top secret levels, there's like, only... we don't share this with any foreign countries. There's other ones that are like you can share it with. There's a group of it's like England and Australia and New Zealand.
And what would be in one of those top secret or classified?
Well, lots of different stuff. So
something about terrorists, like different profiles on different people were.
There's a lot. I mean, we don't know what these specific documents. There's hints around what some of them are. We know some details.
Is it because they're classified?
Well, yeah, that's going to be the tricky part about some of the prosecution of this is that how do you tell people they're serious without revealing them? Mm-hmm. And if you reveal them, if they actually have sensitive information, you're revealing sensitive information. So they're going to have a hard time walking that line because if it really is serious, they really can't share them.
Right.
But if if they can share them because they're not serious enough, it's like, but either way, here's the point is that if anyone else did what he did, they would be in jail. Anyone else. And by anyone else, I mean anyone that was not at the top levels of government like that. Lots of people have gone to jail for just having documents when they weren't supposed to.
So he just put them in his briefcase at the end of the day and took them.
Well, I mean, it was more like boxes and boxes because this is like...
What a fool.
So he thus thought, his opinion was they're mine. I should be able to keep them. But the way that works is no, they're the United States... They're the people's documents, and the point of classification and all this kind of stuff, especially, but really even beyond that.
Because if a public person saw them, there would be serious repercussions, or
potentially, yeah. I mean, we don't know exactly, but here's kind of levels of classification: is that sometimes it's here's something that people know, but they don't know how we got the information. So it could be revealing a human source, or it could be revealing technology that we have to spy on other countries that we don't want revealed that we can do.
Okay, yeah.
It could also just be it could be really secret information. It could be I think the one that he allegedly was sharing with a journalist was like plans for an attack on Iran. So that would be really
sensitive.
That would be really sensitive because that's not public at all. Whereas satellite photos, there was one point where he shared some sort of thing on Twitter one time that was a little bit too, he kind of shared some information that he shouldn't have. He kind of did that throughout his presidency, where he let I think he likes bragging about it, honestly. He likes to be look at the cool stuff I know that, you don't.
But let me tell you.
Yeah. So he took a bunch of documents. The problem is that once the office that figured out that he had these documents were like, we need those back. And he basically, here's exactly what happened. Okay, this is the outline of what happened. He took 337 classified documents from the White House. When the archives asked for them back, he fought them for a year, claiming he had the right to them. Okay, so secretly for a year before that raid, they were going back and forth. He was like, they're mine. They're like, no, you've got to give them back to us.
He's a fool.
He's trying to claim Presidential Records Act, which is things like diaries and journals and stuff like that. That would be yours, like notes from the day and stuff. But classified documents are never included in that. And so, so he clearly these kind of mistakes happen because Joe Biden has been caught with a bunch of stuff in his garage too, right? Mm-hmm. And so, people do in that mad dash of getting out, keep in mind this all happens in like a couple days that someone moves out and then someone else moves in and all that stuff's supposed to go to like, some of it goes to presidential library kind of stuff. Some of it goes back to archives. I don't know. I don't do that crap. I'm so glad. But he's not supposed to have classified documents after he's not the president. He tried to claim that he declassified them by bringing them to Mar-a-Lago, as if he just can I think I've heard people call it like Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy on The Office.
Wait, hold on.
I declare bankruptcy.
Yeah, just like me taking them, like he thought he made up some new rule.
He said I had a standing order that anything I took to Mar-a-Lago was declassified. But he took it after he was, in the lead up. That's not how it works either. There's a declassification process. The president can declassify anything he wants to.
Anything he wants to?
He is the top of it. So he can do whatever he wants.
Not retroactively.
Not after he's not the president. Yes. But he could have, while he was president, declassified everything if he wanted to. It's his prerogative. People don't do that because it would be very dangerous and foolish. But yeah, the president has that control when he's the president. For sure. But when you're not the president, you do not have it, okay?
Makes sense.
So then, this is where stuff gets a little crazy. So a grand jury subpoena forced him to turn, he gave them 197 documents in January of 2022, which is a portion of them. But then now it
So they knew that he had them.
Yeah, they knew he had them.
And he knew that they knew he had them.
Yes, they were going back and forth for a year about this. So this is...
So the raid...
So this is January 2021 is when he takes the stuff. By January 2022, he gives them some of the stuff. And then they're like, well, we don't think this is all of it. Because basically now what we know via the indictment is that there were people inside, people that worked for him that were telling the National Archives that he still has stuff. And there were pictures of it, boxes just open and strewn on the floor and in bathrooms and the ballroom stage and stuff. It's just all over the place, right? Which we'll talk about that when we talk about what's the difference between Hillary and this and stuff. So he gives them that stuff. Then grand jury subpoena forced him to turn the rest over. And when Trump's lawyers gave 38 more documents and claimed that was all of them, it's because first, one thing he said was why don't we just not do it? Why don't we lie to him or whatever? The lawyers are okay, you can't. So his aide helps him hide a bunch of the documents so that when his lawyers come check and sign a thing that says, yeah, that's all the documents. He's throwing his lawyers under the bus is what he's doing. He's making them lie for him, but they're not really, the lawyers did not lie.
They didn't know.
He hid the documents from them so that they could certify.
But his aide is in deep doo-doo.
Yeah, he's a conspirator. He's a conspirator in this whole thing for the obstruction of justice because he was hiding stuff that he knew they weren't supposed to do. Okay. So this is all stuff that is in the indictment, and obviously the government has to prove that in court. Trump's not guilty yet, but it doesn't look great, especially because he's allegedly on tape saying things like showing it to a journalist and being like, look at this is blah, 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 and blah, 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 and I can't show it to you. I'm not supposed to, and I could have declassified it when I was president, but I can't now. He literally...
Why does he do these things?
I don't know. He's on tape. It's a journalist. And the real problem is that these are not... People want to say it's the deep state, blah, 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 blah. His own lawyer had to get subpoenaed and had to testify basically against him because he was in a position where it's by the law, I have to. This is a guy that defended him and worked for him forever, but he couldn't, he's painted into a corner. Name? I can't remember the lawyer's name. It's in the indictment, whichever. But matter. Anyway, but one of his own lawyers didn't really, it's not that he turned on him. That's not what I would say. I would say that he was going like, look, you're one of the lawyers that's saying you had all this stuff. We need to know what happened, kind of thing, because otherwise, you're going to go to jail if you lied about this or whatever. And he basically was trying to, he declined to do it for a long time because he was like, it's attorney-client privilege, et cetera. And they're like, no, but this is different. If he was committing a crime in the process.
How did they know that the lawyer knew, though?
Well, I mean, they just knew he was close enough to the situation that he had to have information that, and specifically, like, when you're a lawyer, attorney-client privilege does not continue on if you are helping them knowingly commit new crimes.
Right.
And so you couldn't do it. Okay. So he lied to his lawyers, essentially. I mean, so these are the people that have been defending him from all this crap, which a lot of it was crap before now, to be fair. And he's throwing them under the bus. Okay. So this is his quote. So he produced a document to this journalist and said, it is like highly confidential. He also said, see, as president, I could have declassified it, but admitted now I can't, but this is still a secret. So, I mean, on tape, because, his original defense when Mar-a-Lago got raided was, oh, I declassified all this stuff. But here he is on tape saying knowing he had not. No, it's not declassified. And he's not supposed to have it, and he does anyway. Which is just like bragging about...
Who is this journalist?
I can't remember. I don't know who it is.
Why does he do these things?
Like I said. Okay, so then the FBI does the search and recovers 102 additional classified documents. What the indictment says the documents had, which I think is all we know right now, because obviously none of us have seen them, it is information regarding defense and weapons capabilities of both the United States and foreign countries, United States nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack.
That's terrifying.
So that's all pretty serious stuff. Now, like I said, we've not seen this stuff, and there's going to be a tricky thing where...
Do they declassify it to prove it?
That's the thing. The DOJ has not exactly painted themselves in glory with all of this stuff that's gone on before this investigation, right? They could be lying about all of that.
Right.
Technically. Now,
hold on.
I think that would be pretty foolish because someone's going to have to, like, Trump's defense is going to have to probably see some of that. There are lawyers that have clearance for this kind of stuff because people have to defend these people. And so you have to, there are lawyers that have like secret clearance and stuff because to defend their client, they need to have it. So I think that would be pretty foolish if the DOJ really... So
you're telling me he had like nuclear, potentially...
Plans, something...
Weapons...
Attack plans, I don't know.
Just sitting in...
Not weapons. He didn't have nuclear weapons.
No. That's not what I meant. But like information about it, like potentially sitting in his house in Florida.
Right. Where they have arrested Chinese spies at Mar-a-Lago.
I was just about to say, is he not afraid people are going to break into his house and... What a dummy.
I agree. What's so stupid about this is that people are like, oh, it's the deep state. This is a witch hunt.
What the H is the deep state?
Well, people think it's like this conspiracy of government to keep them out of power and all this stuff. Okay. Conspiracy. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed that the government's just terrible at almost everything they do.
Almost everything.
I don't think that they'd be very good at conspiring to like, and keep in mind, he made it very easy for them if this was a conspiracy because he took the documents, so he kept them when they asked for him back. Yeah. And then he lied about it, and he had someone help him cover it up, and he bragged to a journalist about having classified information. So, like, that's not deep state. That's not people lying about you.
So,
that's
like,
not
the ultra right wingers might be like, this is an deep state ploy
to keep him from running in 2024. To keep him from becoming president in 2024. This is the okay. So let's talk about the.
But now it just came out a few weeks ago that Biden also had classified.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about a couple things.
See, because that's not fair either.
Here's some defenses that I've heard that I think are valid points.
In the emails.
Okay, so yeah, Hillary and Biden are the two things that people are bringing up the most. And even Mike Pence had some documents. Yeah. They quickly were like, yeah, this is... The overclassification thing is a really important thing to keep in mind because a lot of times people just classify stuff as secret because it's embarrassing or something, or sometimes it's literally
what's embarrassing,
like something in the report, the government F something up and they're like, oh, we don't want that getting out, and so they classify it so that people can't know about it. Or I heard a guy on a podcast talking about how this was an ex congressman who was like, he was in the military before he was a congressman. He said it was something like 3 years when he had secret clearance, before he saw anything that surprised him or he didn't already kind of know. before he knew about a capability that we didn't have or something like that. And he specifically talked about how a lot of the time, it could be something like a diplomat's travel plans, and you have an itinerary and it's secret because it would be secret at the moment. Well, once that happens, it's no longer really, so there's not a good declassification process. We don't have a good one. It doesn't
seem like there's good levels of...
Right, because there's a huge problem with the more you classify, the more you have people that can access it that shouldn't. So there's been a recent one where this kid, I say kid because he was literally like 23 years old or something and worked IT and was leaking, he was just browsing through secret documents because he had clearance to do so and was leaking them on a Discord channel where he was like chatting with other, and he got arrested. My point is he got arrested and he's going to jail.
Yeah.
And he didn't really do anything different than Donald Trump did, except he did put him online, which is incredibly stupid.
Yep.
And really, Hillary Clinton, same thing. It's like she set up a private email server and was sending, I think there was something like a dozen. But keep in mind, it was like 12 secret documents that Hillary Clinton went through that server.
Not 397 or whatever.
The bigger problem with Hillary Clinton is that was also illegal because she's not supposed to be doing government correspondence on an email server that we don't have the right to see every email, because that's the Freedom of Information Act says that we get to see the records of who goes to the White House and who the president talked to, and we might not get to see the details of it, but we get to see that kind of stuff, and we can't audit an email trail.
So she did some shady stuff too.
Absolutely, she did some shady stuff.
Yeah, knowingly did some shady stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, she did shady stuff, and the precedent that we set at that point was James Comey, the director of the FBI, comes out and says before the election, like, we found, and his little list of reasons they didn't go after Clinton was, I think, pretty bogus. She clearly violated the law, and the reason we have these classified document laws is to keep our secrets from getting to our enemies, because there are people that want to kill us and attack us and stuff. So the whole point of the law doesn't say what your intent has to be. It's not like, because it's obviously worse if you try to sell them to Russia, but we don't care. By the letter of the law, it's like if you have classified documents and you're not supposed to, we have these secure areas where people can read them. You're not supposed to take them out of there. All these people did that. I wish the Justice Department would charge all of them, because they all did wrong stuff. Yeah. It's either negligence.
She's owned up to it though, right?
No, not really. I mean, she's kind of like, she just dusted off as like, but her emails kind of thing, as if like, as if that wasn't a big problem. Yeah, exactly. And I think I think she was trying to downplay it. And I think that leads into giving Trump an excuse for his behavior, which is different, I think. Now, but I think Hillary's was somewhat more egregious, because at least you have to walk in Mar-a-Lago to get to these documents. But like, if you set up an email server that's private and can be hacked from anywhere in the world, it's a different situation. So
okay. So then what did they find with Biden?
So with Biden, he ended up having a bunch of documents.
He probably
in
might
three
not have
different places
known if he did or didn't.
Well, this is from back when he was vice president. So I think he had a little bit more wherewithal back then. This is back when he was still, acting on Parks and Rec every once in a while. And so he didn't really have a good excuse either, because it's kind of like, it got mixed up in the move out. It's like, okay, so... Is it important? Can you do your job well? Because like, if you can't get documents out of your office when you're vice president and not take the secret ones, is your staff? I can't figure out what's hard.
And is there no one that is kind of like policing?
Sort of, but there are way too many documents. There's just way too many classified documents.
Yeah, and you would think that there would be some government something or other that's like, yes, no, yes, no.
Well, so it gets complicated, because there's places like the White House where the whole place is secure, so documents are a little bit more all over the place there.
Or just like, you can't take anything.
Yeah, but if you're in Congress, let's say someone has to bring classified stuff over to a briefing for the Senate Intelligence Committee or something like that. They're going to bring it over in like a locked container, take them into a room that like no one can bring their cell phone in, and it's swept for bugs, and they're going to look at those documents, and then that person's going to take it back to wherever it stays. So it's a little harder to keep track of that. But at the White House, no, they're probably just all over the place, because the whole place is secure, allegedly. And so...
Do you think it would make sense to put everything digitally?
Not really, because it's less secure technically in some ways. I mean, some stuff is digital, so it's not. And like I said, there's different classifications. So there's some stuff that's
so crazy.
I definitely think we need to have a conversation about what we're going to do going forward here. Because now, let's say Trump gets...
Can you imagine the stress of being the cart pusher for like...
Right. Yeah. I mean, in some ways this has gotten...
That's like an episode of Homeland. Like you just get shot out of nowhere.
Right. Well, but I mean, keep in mind, most of this stuff is not really... Like the stuff that's really, really secret and secure is probably well secured, would be my guess, in some way. Now, we don't know what Trump took, and we know more about what Hillary had, and I think they thought I think 4 of the documents were top secret. I can't remember the numbers, but, there's probably an I think it's a little bit of all the above. I think it's too much classification. Mm-hmm. I think some of it is like negligence that we don't take seriously at the top, that we would if anyone in the military that did what any one of those people did would be in jail. Period.
Or any just regular civilian.
Right, but I mean, most regular... Yeah, but I mean, there are civilians too. So like the kid. The kid, that was... I mean, he was in the National Guard, I think, or something. But still, I mean, it's not... He's going to go to jail for that. And he should. I mean, I think... But like, we're letting... I think that's why people don't have faith in the Justice Department, is because it's clearly there's different rules for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Donald Trump than there are for people just right below them.
But would the Hillarys and the Joe Bidens of the world say that Trump should have gotten in trouble for the Mar-a-Lago stuff?
Well, of course they do, because they're Democrats.
I know, but like, are they publicly saying he should go to jail for that?
Well, okay.
Knowing that we also know that they had classified documents? Yeah. Or they kind of like, don't talk about it, because if it gets spoken about, then people will also ask us.
Well, it's interesting because Joe Biden was quoted after the Mar-a-Lago raid.
Yeah, saying stuff about like...
He said no one should, like, I don't know his exact quote, but it's something like no one should be trusted to be in government that can't keep track of these documents.
Yep.
He was even writing it off as, let's say it was a mistake, because keep in mind at this point, we didn't know about the whole back and forth of them trying to get the documents from him for a year. We didn't know about all this stuff. It was just all of a sudden one day it was like they're at Mar-a-Lago looking for classified documents.
And what was his reasoning for saying it was a raid? As if like they came unannounced?
I think everyone just said that. But yeah, that's not how it went down. I mean, it's not... Raid is a weird thing. I mean, I consider a raid like you're going into a drug house at 4 a.m.
Yeah, guns rappel from the ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, this was not that. This was we've got a warrant and we're showing up. I mean, I'm sure they didn't like announce it because they wanted to try to find the stuff or whatever. But I mean, I would call it, they executed a search warrant is what really happened. Yeah. But raid is a lot easier to say than executed a search warrant.
It's a bit more catchy.
But I mean, he said that right after that. Well, then it comes out a few months later.
Why did that fool not just take them to another residence? I just feel like I could have hidden stuff a lot better than him.
I think you could have.
Like, move him to one of your other residences.
I think it proves his ineptitude, which is why when people are like, funny. He can solve it all. I'm like, he can't even hide the documents he was trying to hide very well.
I'm like, wait a second. I could have done that.
Yeah, what makes you think he could do anything that great? He can't even hide these documents that he wanted to keep for himself. So... Yeah, so Biden gets caught saying that, and then a few months later, actually not a few months later, because we don't figure that out until after the election, but the truth is they found those documents in Biden's garage before the 2022 midterm elections. Yahtzee. And they did not...
Yahtzee.
They did not publicly state anything about it.
Of course they didn't.
Which I think is wrong. I think it's really wrong, because they know why they didn't do it. It's because they didn't want to have to eat crow of Joe Biden being guilty of the same thing that Trump was.
Yeah, right before midterms.
To the letter of the law. Because keep in mind, the indictment against Trump is like 34 charges of I don't have it anyway he's not charged with taking the documents because it was his right technically to take them when he was president. So that is not the crime. The crime is that when they asked for them back, he kept them. So like 31 of the counts are the documents that he still had, which actually, hold on, I guess it would be I don't know, whatever. And so I've seen some lawyers argue that should have been one count instead of one count per document or whatever the situation was. But that's not the most serious count. The more serious counts are the obstruction of justice for him conspiring with the aide to hide the stuff and have his lawyers lie about it. When he knew he wasn't supposed to have them, they'd asked for him back, and he then tried to lie and hide extra documents to keep them. That's really the serious charge.
Will he admit that now?
Well, he's just claiming he had the right to do so. I mean, and if he's smart... Big if. he will not talk about this, because the problem is every time he opens his mouth, he further incriminates himself for the most part. The judge has told him he's not allowed to talk about the case, not allowed to talk about the case with that aide, which I don't see how that's going to happen.
Do we know who the aide is?
Yeah, I can't remember his name. It's a weird name. I can't ever remember it. I'm terrible with names. If you haven't noticed, I know no one's names. I'll put them at the bottom of the screen if you're watching
that's
a video.
A good one.
There you go. I can
or what do podcasters
later.
say? Oh, we'll put that in the show notes.
In the show notes. Yeah, we can put it there. I put all the names of everyone I can't remember.
I don't actually care.
Yeah, I don't either. But that's the. But more I meant like,
is his identity known? Is I guess what my question.
Oh yes, yeah. It's a longtime military aide of his, and moved with him to Mar-a-Lago too, as far as continues to be an aide for him. So, and that guy's caught up in this too, obviously. So
they're all doing shady junk with classified documents.
Right. And so, but the real difference between Trump and Hillary and Biden is that when they found the documents, they turned them over.
Yeah.
And said, whoops, we had all this stuff we weren't supposed to. Now that's still illegal, but which is why I think they just shouldn't have charged Trump with the having of the documents and maybe just the obstruction stuff, because then you at least go like, and to be fair, the investigation of the Biden stuff is still ongoing. Biden stuff was maybe even more egregiously out. It was like in a garage, just like right there. And some of it was at this like a law library thing in Pennsylvania. So not a great look either.
From Obama's presidency.
Right, from when he was vice president. And keep in mind, the vice president does not have the powers that the president does.
But the vice president
does not have the declassification powers or any of that kind of stuff.
So that's a bigger...
it's technically... That's why Trump is not charged with taking the documents, because he had the power to do that, technically. Now, depends when he took them. If he took them at 12:01 p.m.,
right.
But he took them before then, technically.
How did they find out that Biden had some hanging out in his garage?
I'm sure someone was like, hey, we better make sure we don't have a bunch of classified documents. And they probably went rummaging through all his old stuff. And then they found him and turned him over. But it's still a bad look, I think, to have been like...
At least they turned him over.
Yeah, I know. But like to be like, no one should be trusted in government that can't keep track of these... So what is it? It is, and I think it's really shady that they purposely hid that, because it was like the week of the election, and they did not want that story running. And I think that's wrong. It's not transparent. He claimed he was going to be the adult. Biden claimed he was going to be transparent. We're going to be back to adults being in the White House, and he has not been. And so, so I think there's valid.
It is terrifying to me though that they get to like take those to a public residence. I don't know why that bothers me so much.
I think the problem is that in that. They shouldn't normally.
The fact that they were sitting in this old geezer's garage.
Right. But they just pack up his whole office and just take all the boxes and they sit there for forever.
They know months in advance that they will be moving out.
True. They do.
It's not
but
like
they still have to work for those months. You know what I mean? It's like you're still running. You're still the president and the vice president.
I don't know. I just feel like there should be a completely separate job for someone who's like, this cannot leave the White House.
Right, but that's my point.
Like, don't my tax dollars have enough?
Why do we trust the federal government to do anything if they can't do that correctly?
I don't think we can.
Right? I mean, that's the problem. Is that like I'm like
that's all I just learned in the past 30 minutes.
That's all we've done.
No, I'm just joking.
But it's true. I mean, it is like, okay, if you can't do.
Well, I'm like, they need better checks and balances.
Right. I think Biden had it right in his quote. I really don't think we should trust people that can't manage to like keep the secret documents away from other people's eyes.
Every day when I leave my office what I am and am not putting into my bag.
Right.
Every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's different.
It is.
But I would know. I can't take that product out of this office.
I mean, I did lose these in-ears for like 6 months. I had them in a jacket pocket. And
that's a real bumski.
Yeah, I just about bought new ones too.
And those are pricey.
They are not cheap. Yeah, but I mean, so I think that's a valid concern. To be fair, that investigation is still ongoing. What I would love to see happen, my favorite scenario in the world would be if Merrick Garland charged them all and just said,
that'd be a good one.
It's not going to happen, but it'd be great if he said like, you know what we're going to do is we're going to charge them both. And, I mean, I don't like, do I think Trump needs to be in jail for this? Probably not. Do I think he shouldn't be president again? Definitely. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I would really love for neither one of them to be the nominee in 2024. I just think that we could do better.
Trump or Biden?
Yeah, I just think we could do better than that. And if Merrick Garland could be the hero of being like, we're going to charge them both. Yeah. They both did illegal stuff.
And neither of them can be the next.
And neither of them, I mean, not that that doesn't make you not able to be. That's the other common misconception. Like, Trump could win the presidency from jail. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't be a federally indicted criminal and be the president of the United States.
What?
Yeah. We're just supposed to be smart enough to not nominate someone.
Right. Is there anything that you think that he has done that could land him in jail? Aside from the...
Well, okay, sorry. The other thing I forgot about is that in between those two indictments, a civil trial
right. What was
for
that one?
For a rape, alleged rape in the 90s, I think?
Yes. Oh, yes, with...
80s, 90s?
What was that girl's name?
I can't remember anyone's name. You already know this.
Yes, but I do remember this one.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Something Carroll.
Jean.
Something Jean Carroll.
Jean?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Gosh, we're so terrible. I should write these things down.
I think it's like Jean or...
He was found guilty in civil court.
Correct.
Of... his defenders are like, not guilty of the rape, but guilty of the basically libel, not libel because he didn't print it, but defamation and stuff like that. So
yeah. Defamation, defamation,
defamation, whatever. That's my word. I'm gonna make it defamation. Yeah, that's a better way to say it.
That's the one thing I can contribute to this.
Hey, please, you're contributing lots. Which that's pretty. Obviously, we don't know what happened. Enough people have credibly accused him of such things that I think it would be pretty. Her testimony was kind of because she couldn't remember the exact date of it. Was the big people going like, well, I think I'd remember the exact date, but she did tell two people immediately, and she was a journalist, and she told another journalist, and they all told her not to do anything about it because like. He'll just ruin your life. I mean, so her counsel of her friends was like, you shouldn't press charges because nothing good will come of it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
When it happened, which is awful that that's the solution we have for people that get sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty. I would be.
But he won't go to jail for that.
No, because it's past the statute of limitations,
yeah.
so he can't.
He just had to pay
but I mean, I think that anyone, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. I think that his Access Hollywood tape, combined with those allegations, combined with allegations from multiple other women, all of which tell basically the same story as what he said he does on that Access Hollywood tape, which is just assault people because you can get away with it if you're a celebrity.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that, the thing is, I don't think Trump is alone in that. I think that that's like a huge problem with, look at all the other people.
People of power.
Yeah, people of power.
Yeah.
It's like, it's happening all over the place, and for the most part, the institutions protect them because I don't know why. Like, NBC could have ran with the Harvey Weinstein stuff, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. They passed on it. I don't think because it didn't lack journalism, integrity.
That's why it's hard too, because it all feels just political to me.
And I agree with that.
Is political.
So I agree that I think Trump is guilty of that stuff.
Yes.
And he should be found liable for it and whatnot. But I also think there's a lot of other people that, like, Bill Clinton is a great example of someone that, like, has as many credible accusations against him. And yet no one feels like he should pay for that. I think more people do now than they did.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it is political. But my argument against people going, well, we got to give Trump a pass because we gave other people a pass is like, okay, well, where does that stop? It never does. If you just keep doing this tit for tat thing, like, does the law mean anything? Does anything matter if we're just going to say, well, because Hillary Clinton did it, we should let Trump get away with this?
Right.
If we let Trump not be indicted for this, I'm not saying he has to be found guilty. That's up to a jury, and to be fair, he's got a judge he nominated as the judge for this at the whatever circuit court. Oh, my dog is now in here.
Hi, Wally.
No one invited you, Wally. But it's like you got to go. Seriously, Wally, come on. No.
Wally has thoughts.
Wally has thoughts on this. We'll let him talk sometime. But you can't. There's definitely a double standard there, but I don't think that should mean we have no standard.
Right.
And so, but that is tricky. I get that argument. Like, I'm sympathetic to it.
I want to talk to you about so many more things, even like other down the road
We can do it another time for sure. I mean, I think, do we have any more Trump indictment questions? I think that runs the list, other than, like I said, a Georgia one is probably coming, although we don't know the details.
But you think that one could be the most serious?
Keep in mind, this is me reading people that think it will be more serious, that I think I take seriously, people that know more about this stuff than I do. But yeah, because he was trying to bully people into lying about votes in an election. I mean, that's like election fraud. That's not.
Ooh, that should be another podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, we gotta wait till it comes up, or at least with his claims of it. It's like, yeah. But if he really did, the other reason I think it's pretty serious is because Georgia has been pretty good about being, it's a pretty red state for the most part, in the sense that, like, all the people the governor, the attorney general, all these people are Republicans,
right? That
outperformed Trump in their elections when they ran in the same years as him and stuff. And he went right after, like, Brian Kemp, the governor, and, like, he won in re-election. So it's like, I think the voters are pretty serious in Georgia. It doesn't seem like they're quite as caught up in this crazy partisan stuff. Now, they elected senators twice, but yeah. I mean, that's really more Trump telling people not to vote in those runoffs. I mean, those should be very winnable Senate seats.
Who was the lady, though, that ran, and it was Stacey Abrams?
Well, yeah, Stacey Abrams, but she's a joke. I mean, but she's the same thing. It's like, why do we excuse her claiming the election was stolen?
Right.
But we say Trump saying the election was stolen was worse. It's the same thing. It's the same thing when Hillary Clinton said it in 2016. It was a lie. It's the same thing when John Kerry and all of his cohorts in 2004 said George Bush stole the election. It's a problem anytime someone does it, but people only seem to be outraged when Trump did it in 2020. I think Trump took it to a different level by, sending a giant riot to the Capitol to try to, like, convince Congress to not certify the election.
Would he admit that now?
Well, of course, he, like, thinks they're all martyrs. I mean, he says I wouldn't say he wouldn't admit to sending them there because, that would be potentially a crime. But I mean, he would say that those people were defending him and were honorable Americans. I mean, he has these tributes at his rallies now with, like, videos of them and stuff. It's weird because January 6th is a complicated thing for sure. It was bad. I don't think most of the people there were bad actors. I think most people were just people what all riots are people that get caught up by, you see one person smash a window and then a second person, you're like, well, I could smash a window.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. But again, the problem with it is that we're like, January 6th, oh my gosh, the horror. But a summer before, we were like, it's fine if it's for Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
And so the hypocrisy just makes people go, well, look, if you're giving them a pass, you got to give us a pass. You got to give our side a pass. And I'm like, no, why don't we just say all riots are bad and burning businesses is bad and beating cops with thin blue line flags is bad and trying to hang Mike Pence is bad. There were some really bad actors in that January 6th stuff. Now, I don't think it was the majority of them, but there were people that were, I think if they would have gotten a hold of the people they were trying to get a hold of, I think they would have killed them possibly. I don't think it's without, there were people with weapons and zip ties, and Trump's getting rid of the metal detectors. Essentially, he didn't want them at his rally because he was like, they're not going to shoot me. And so he was asking them to get rid of called them mags, they're magnometers or whatever, that because he was like, no one's coming to get me. So I mean, it's like almost like wanting them to have weapons that then, I mean, it's sketchy if nothing else. I think he wanted to get his way, and I think he's got all these people that fight for him, and he doesn't care about them.
How does he still have so much of a following?
Well, but keep in mind, I think most people...
Is it because people they're like, well, he's the only Republican?
Well, I think that's silly, though. We're gonna have a Republican primary with like a dozen people you could pick from.
Hold on. In an election, this election happens tomorrow. Biden-Trump, who wins tomorrow? Oh,
I don't know. I don't think there's any way Trump can win that election, because who has he added to his coalition since 2020?
But do you think? But I feel like even Democrats are starting to be like, Biden.
They're not going to vote for Trump.
Yeah, maybe they just won't vote.
I think that.
Yeah, you're right.
It's hard.
They have to choose.
I see no way that Trump can win, unless literally. But then something crazy could happen, and I talked about this on a couple episodes ago with McKinsey. Was like, and unfortunately we predicted it. Like, we recorded it on a Wednesday, and then Biden. I was like, he could fall And he fell like 2 days later at that Air Force thing. And it's sad. This is not me making fun of him. This is me going like, that scares me to have that guy in charge of the nuclear arsenal. It does. Because he could fall and hit his head tomorrow. Mitch McConnell fell and was in the hospital for like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And he, I think very clearly has more mental wherewithal than Biden does. But that's still scary because it's when a senator falls, it's not that big of a deal. He might miss a vote or something. Although that's the, House Minority Leader. That's a bigger position to try to deal with while he was gone, I'm sure. But if Biden is incapacitated, you've got a 25th Amendment situation.
Yeah, you've got Kamala.
Do you have to swear Kamala? Like if he hit his head and got a concussion, what would they do? I'm just like, this is not outside the realm of possibility.
Oh, Lord
he fell
Jesus.
a week ago. So something like that could happen. Honestly, they're both really freaking old. Either one of them could die after really becoming the nominee. I mean, it's not. Yeah. This is not outside the realm of possibilities. We still have lots of things that could happen. But I think that's why the safer bet is to go with someone that's not Trump, and you will just guarantee to beat Biden. Because I think it's like 70% of the country doesn't want either one of them.
Do you think they'll be able to put anyone else up?
I think something really bad would have to happen to Biden for that to happen. I don't think that...
Falling on a national stage?
Right. No, I mean, I think he'd have to actually get injured or have a life-threatening situation or have Kamala has to get even sworn in temporarily for them to be like, we really have to
even the Democrats think she's a walking disaster, right?
Yes. Everything I see is like she can't be it's a tricky position for them, though, because they can't say that because of the identity politics stuff.
Yeah.
It's like she's the first black woman vice president, and so they can't take that back. They can't take that away from her.
Yeah.
And so they're in a tricky position, but I don't think she's good at politics. I don't think she's good at the job.
Have you seen the White House, what they posted on Instagram and Twitter today? It was like the duo that gets the job done. Oh, gosh. It's the comments they left him on, which is like...
a bad idea.
It's like an Onion article. I'm like... Who?
Yeah, that's a bad idea. I don't want to say I feel bad for her. This is part of politics, but she should have gotten better at this job at some point, and she just hasn't. I mean, she has staff turnover, and I think she'd be a really bad executive. I think governors tend to do better than senators in general.
Yeah, they've led
I think that they've actually done that job at a smaller level. So yeah, I don't. All that to say, I think DeSantis is getting so attacked by everyone, and he's not done anything great so far. His Twitter announcement was kind of a mess. He's kind of had a few small kind of things that were supposed to be bigger. No one's paying attention yet though, so it doesn't really matter, but it will if donors start bailing from him. And that stuff matters. Money matters. And so I think we'll know more. I think really all this is a wash and everyone's just guessing until we have at least one debate. And it depends also if Trump's at that debate and stuff. But
why wouldn't he be?
He says he's not going to do it.
I
think because he's a coward. I mean, people think he's all tough and stuff, but I think he doesn't want to have to debate people because he has a record now. He didn't have a record in 2016 when he ran. It's easy to be the guy that has no political baggage. He had baggage, but not the kind that, even Jeb Bush or Chris Christie or someone had after having been elected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now he has a record. So I think it's fair to hit him on stuff like, hey, why didn't you do a better job with COVID? And why didn't you do a better job with... Because I think DeSantis has valid points about that. To be able to say, look, I did a good job in my state, but you didn't fire Fauci and you let him and the CDC keep our schools closed and all sorts of stuff for a lot longer than should have gone on. And, he's got a real record that some people don't like some of the things he did.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to defend that. But some people will just defend him no matter what. And I think those people... You have to just count out. Don't try to get them. They're never going to come to you, ever. And if you lose without them, fine. Find some other vote somewhere else. Find independents. Find the suburban women you've lost. But I think you just got to write off that part of the Trump base that is never going to vote for anyone else. Yeah. And there are probably people that, they like the chaos and the change. There's people that voted for Barack Obama twice and then Trump twice. Well, that doesn't make any sense policy-wise.
Yeah. Well, how much role do you think policy actually plays in?
None now.
None anymore.
I don't think anyone has any policy principles because now it's just about a cult of personality.
It's personality.
Yeah. But And that's the other reason I don't think DeSantis has a great shot. He doesn't have a great personality.
Yeah, he's kind of polarizing.
I think people want.
But a lot of people like his politics.
Oh no! I mean, I think he's been a decent governor. I think he's done some things that I don't love his kind of like authoritarian streak that he's got in him. I mean, he's losing a lot of these battles in courts because they're not legal things to do as the state government, and I think that's foolish because it's just trying to like churn up your base, but it costs taxpayers money and it's performative, and I'd rather you just get the job done. But he does get a lot of the job done too. But I think you can just do that, and he won by 19 points on his reelection. That's huge.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's mostly talking about. It's like, hey, we should have someone that wins. I won. But I don't know that people want to win. I don't know that Republicans I think they might rather have Trump go in there and lose. Like they feel like that's better somehow than winning. But I don't know. But we'll see. But I think your premise of this entire thing of how you're exhausted because all you hear about is these Trump things, and then we have one that's actually, I think, pretty serious. I think the document stuff is serious, but you even I don't want to say you don't take it seriously.
No.
But you're almost just like, I've been hearing about this
I
for
have to wipe my
8
hands
years.
Yeah.
Like, so what do I believe? What do I not believe? And I think that's the biggest problem is that most people have checked out, and I don't necessarily even blame people for going like, yeah, well, that's what they said about the P tapes.
I'm so glad you reminded me about that.
Yeah.
I just had totally forgotten about that.
It's funny though, because it would not surprise me if such a thing existed, but they didn't. It was a lie. And so it's one of those things where it's, it's like, that's how we got here though. That's how we got here where we can't. I think the attacks on the Department of Justice are fair. I think that they botched a lot of stuff. I think the FBI needs some serious reform going back to decades and decades and decades ago. I mean, keep in mind these are people that told Martin Luther King to kill himself. This is the FBI. This is not like they've not, like I said, painted themselves with glory a lot.
They don't have a great track record.
They don't have a great track. And I'm not saying we need federal law enforcement. I think that we've got to separate the counterintelligence from the law enforcement side of things. I think those should just be two different things because we tried to post 9/11, we tried to scoot all that stuff together to communicate more, but it really just made everything messy and it's abuse of power and stuff. And I think the Department of Justice has absolutely abused its power. I don't think that this is Biden abusing his power by going after his political rival, but I think that's a fair point to say, how can the head of the Justice Department be trying to arrest and criminally charge his main opponent right now?
Yeah.
I think that's a fair thing to say, which is why I would love the other dream scenario that I've heard people talk about is what if Biden pardoned Trump and didn't run again? But as part of the deal with the pardon was you have to admit to everything. You have to basically apologize for it, and you can't run for office ever again.
Yeah, right.
It won't ever happen, but I would give Biden props for being actually do what he said he was going to do, just come in and be an adult and go all right, I'm going to pass the torch to someone else. And I'm going to get rid of these 2 old people. This will never happen. That's a dream if that happened, but it's within his power. And I don't think Trump would ever accept it.
Yeah, no.
But, and people would hate, people on the left would hate Biden for it too. Cause there are some people that just want to see Trump in jail, which, like I said, probably never going to happen just from a logistical standpoint. Does Secret Service have to live in jail with him? No, it's not going to happen. That's a logistical nightmare. I don't see any way that's going to happen. And so, some people would be mad, but I mean, that would be dream scenario. I would love for something like that to happen where neither one of them are running for president in 2024, but we are running out of time for something like that to happen because, primaries start
soon,
early next year.
Well, Blake.
Yeah, fun. Thanks for coming on. Come do it again. We'll talk about.
I want to talk about next time the Biden family dramas.
Oh yeah, there's some good stuff there too. But I don't know that again. Why do we elect people that surround themselves with these shady people? I mean, that's my problem. Is that it's it seems like this happens everywhere, and it's just well, your guy's shady, and they're saying it's why can't we just get rid of these people? Why do we have to have? They're not all like this. I don't think Tim Scott is shady.
And I don't know who that is because
he's great.
probably because he's not shady.
He's not. That's probably why you don't know him. Seems like a nice guy. He's a senator. He's running for president from South Carolina. And I like him, but he probably doesn't have a shot because he's a nice guy. You know?
Nice guys.
Sad for nice guys. I know. They do sometimes.
Except you.
Well, we'll yet to see. I haven't done anything like that. So, and nor will I. Yeah, why would I want to go work for the government?
No, I don't.
Sounds terrible. All right. Thanks for coming on, Kelley.